Welcome to level 20 out of 31 levels of the 613 degrees or rungs on Jacob's ladder. When you offer something to God or give something up, there are always traces or small remains of the desire, thought, emotion, action, or restraint that are left. These traces are what leads to temptation. It is best to rid these traces completely, breaking wholeheartedly and not partially. In Spiritics, this is called the tithe. The tithe is the last tenth of something. The first example of this is impatience. Let's say you give up 9/10 of impatience. Giving up the last tenth is called giving the tithe of impatience, creating patience. So it is good to give up the tithe of impatience, creating patience. Carelessness, creating carefulness and caution. Greed, creating moderation. Racism and sexism, creating tolerance. Egoistic promises, creating altruistic promises. Egoistic and selfish will, creating altruistic and selfish will. Ramming, bullying, goading, red hyphering, youing, and she-goading, creating peace and humility. Flight worshiping, creating settling down, causing joy. Wildness, creating tameness. Cold heart, creating a warm heart. Pride, creating modesty. Spiritual death, creating spiritual life. And uncleanliness, creating cleanliness. So in Spiritics, a tithe is the final tenth of a spiritual payment to God. In Spiritics, virtue is a form of payment to God. When we are very virtuous and perform many acts of kindness and love, God pays us spiritual money called joy. When we are wicked and perform sin, transgressions, and trespasses, we borrow money from God and receive pleasure. So when we tithe, we are making that final payment to God, giving up transitory, transient, fleeting, momentary pleasures for longer-lasting joy. Joy is the currency of God, and pleasure is the currency of Satan, also called the ego. Satan is the opponent, and if we become pleasure seekers, it is as if we owe God spiritual money in the form of virtues. So it is good to practice virtue, not only because it's the right thing to do, but because it is more fulfilling than the fleeting pleasures of this world. Joy is enjoyment from heaven, and pleasure is enjoyment on earth. The joy experienced from loving others is unbounded and cannot compare to a temporary pleasure from pleasuring oneself. Of course, it is necessary to satisfy the body and keep the body and mind happy with food, sex, and shelter, but focusing on the pleasures of this world should be secondary to focusing on the joys of heaven. So to offer the tithe is to not use the last of a particular quality such as impatience or carelessness. When you practice patience, you run out of impatience. It is best to fully run out of impatience and to not use the last of impatience. It is interesting because a person can also run out of patience when they experience stress, darkness, negativity, pain, and sorrow. Here we are trying to do the opposite by running out of impatience, which can be caused by experiencing relaxation, meditation, light, positivity, joy, and happiness. The lesson is that there is always a way to bail oneself out of spiritual debt. If one was raised in a harsh environment with rough conditions and grew up on sin, transgressions, and trespasses, it is much harder to bail oneself out of spiritual debt with God because of a person's upbringing. Once a person grows older, their chances increases of opportunities to bail oneself out. A person can gradually move up the spiritual ladder by choosing a positive environment where one can perform endless acts of kindness, love, and joy. Remember that for every sin, transgression, or trespass, a person should make 2 times the amount of virtues. So the rule is 2 virtues for every sin. If this rule is followed, spiritual profit is sure to occur, and we can then soar to the heavens, giving up the tithes, completely eradicating sin, and becoming spiritually rich and wealthy.